Welcome again, dear students. Myself, Dr. Kaleem Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Department of Wildlife Sciences, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Today, we will discuss a very hot topic, that is threats to biodiversity. Biodiversity, actually, as we all know, is the intricate web of life on Earth that encompasses the variety of ecosystem, species, and genetic diversity. We can say it is the foundation of ecosystem functioning that actually provide essential services upon which human societies actually depend. However, we can say this rich tapestry of life faces an unprecedented crisis, with species disappearing at alarming rates. So, in this comprehensive exploration, we delve into multifaceted threats to biodiversity, ranging from natural phenomena to anthropogenic activities. So, understanding, we can say, these threats is crucial for devising effective strategies to mitigate biodiversity loss and preserve the ecological balance of our planet. Now, in today's lecture, we will discuss these things under the following headings. That's natural threats to biodiversity. What are the different natural threats to biodiversity? We will also try to discuss what are the different anthropogenic threats to biodiversity, and we will also try to discuss what are the impacts of the biodiversity loss at the larger scales, and we will try to discuss what are the possible solution to biodiversity loss, and we will try to conclude the things at the end of this lecture. Let's start from natural threats to biodiversity. Throughout our Earth history, geological events such as volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and asteroids impacts have caused mass extinctions, thus actually reshaping the planet biodiversity. While we can say these events are natural occurrence, their consequences for biodiversity can be, we can say, catastrophic. For example, the Chekhov events that occurred approximately 66 billion years ago led to the extinction of non-avian dinosaurs and many other species. While such events, we can say, are rare, they highlight the vulnerability of life on Earth to natural disruptions. What are the different natural threats to the biodiversity? Let's start from this. The first one, climate change has been, we can say, a driving force behind evolutionary process and ecosystem dynamics throughout the Earth history. However, we can say the current pace and the magnitude of the climate change far exceed natural viability due to human activities such as burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial activities. Rising temperature, shifting precipitation patterns, and increasing frequency of the extreme weather events pose significant challenge to biodiversity. Species, you can say, must adopt or migrate or face extinctions as their habitat becomes inhospitable or disappear entirely. We can say that we can see in coral reefs, for example, are particularly vulnerable to climate change induced ocean warming and acidifications, and leading to widespread bleaching events and ecosystem degradation. Habitat destruction is another most, we can say, significant threat to biodiversity worldwide. Human activities such as deforestation, urbanization, conversion of natural ecosystem for agriculture, and infrastructure development results in the loss, fragmentation, and degradation of the habitats. Forests wetlands, grasslands, and other vital ecosystems are cleared at alarming rates, displacing, we can say, countless species and pushing them towards extinction. For example, the Amazon rainforests, often referred to as the lungs of the earth, is under immense pressure from deforestation for cattle ranching, agriculture, and logging, thus jeopardizing its biodiversity and contributing to climate change. Another, our exploitation, the unsustainable, we can say, exploitation of natural resources pose a significant threat to biodiversity. Overfishing, illegal logging, and hunting decimate population of many species, driving many to the brink of extinctions. Some iconic species such as elephant, rhinoceros, tigers are targeted for their tusks, horns, and pelts, fueling, we can say, a lucrative illegal wildlife trade. Similarly, overfishing and destructive fishing practices deplete marine resources and leading to the collapse of fisheries and the disruption of the marine ecosystem. The extinction of species, we can say, due to our exploitation not only undermines biodiversity but also disrupts ecosystem functioning and its resilience. Pollution, another threat, another, we can say, anthropogenic threat. Pollution from industrial, agriculture, and domestic sources contaminates air, water, and soil, posing a significant threat to biodiversity. Chemical pollutants such as pesticides, heavy metals, and plastics accumulates in ecosystem, poisoning organisms and disrupting ecological process. Agriculture runoff containing nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizers leads to eutrophications of water bodies, causing algal blooms and hypox, dead zones devoid of marine life. Plastic pollutions, particularly, we can say, in the oceans, poses a grave threat to marine biodiversity, with millions of the marine animals dying each year from ingestion or entanglement in the plastic debris. Another is a major threat, we can say, invasive species. The introduction of non-native species into new environment, either, we can say, intentionally or unintentionally, can have devastating effects on native biodiversity. Invasive species actually often outcompetes native species for resources, prey on native organisms, and spread diseases, leading to population decline and extinctions. Some of the example includes the cane toad in Australia, which has wreaked havoc on native wildlife since its introduction in the 1930s, and the zebra mussel in North America, which has disrupted freshwater ecosystems since its accidental introduction in the 1980s, and catfish in India badly impacts the local species. We can say the globalization of trade and transportation facilities, the spread of invasive species exacerbating their impacts on the biodiversity worldwide. Another is climate change. Climate change, primarily, we can say, driven by the human activities, poses a multifaceted threats to biodiversity. Rising temperature, changing precipitation patterns, and increasing frequency of extreme weather events alter habitats, disrupt ecosystems, and shift species distributions. Arctic ecosystems are particularly vulnerable to climate change, with rapidly melting ice permafrost threatening iconic species such as polar bears and Arctic foxes. Mountain ecosystems also face similar threats or challenges, as rising temperatures force species to higher elevations where suitable habitat may be scarce. Additionally, climate change poses other threats to biodiversity, such as habitat destructions and invasive species, further compounding the challenge faced by the ecosystem and the species worldwide. The loss of, we can say, what are the different, we can say, impacts of the biodiversity loss? We can say the loss of the biodiversity has profound consequences for ecosystems, human societies, and the planet as a whole. Biodiversity actually loss destabilizes ecosystems, reducing their resilience to environments change and increasing the risk of ecosystem collapse. Ecosystem services such as, we can say, pollination, nutrient cycling, and water purifications provided by diverse biological communities are compromised, undermining human well-being and livelihood. For example, we can say the decline of pollinators such as bees and the butterflies threatened agriculture productivity and food security, as many crops actually depend on insect pollination for their reproduction. Biodiversity loss, there is also some economic cost to biodiversity loss. We can say the biodiversity loss carries a significant economic cost, affecting industries reliant on ecosystem services such as agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and tourism. The decline of the, we can say, the fish stock due to overfishing, for example, not only undermines marine biodiversity but also jeopardize the livelihood of millions of the people who depend on fisheries for income and food security. Similarly, deforestation and habitat destruction lead to the loss of valuable ecosystem services such as carbon sequestrations, water regulation, soil fertility, with far-reaching economic implications. Biodiversity loss also pose a threat to global food security by reducing the resilience of agriculture systems to pests, disease, and environmental stressors. Monoculture agriculture, characterized by the cultivation of single crop over large areas, is particularly vulnerable to pest outbreaks and crop failures. Diminished genetic diversity in crops and livestock increases the vulnerability of the food production systems to climate change and other threats, actually jeopardizing the availability of nutritious food for growing populations. Agroecological approaches that harness biodiversity to enhance ecosystem resilience and productivity offer promising solutions to address food security challenge while preserving the biodiversity. There is also impact of biodiversity loss on culture. Indigenous peoples, we can say, and local communities depend on biodiversity for cultural identity, traditional knowledge. The loss of biodiversity undermines cultural practices, erodes traditional knowledge systems, and threatens the survival of indigenous cultures and the language. Traditional ecological knowledge passed down through generations provides valuable insights into the sustainable management of natural resources and conservation of the biodiversity. Preserving and respecting indigenous rights and knowledge system is essential for effective biodiversity conservation and sustainable development. Biodiversity loss and climate change are actually interconnected that can reinforce each other through feedback loops. For example, deforestation reduces carbon sequestrations, contributing to climate change, which in turn exacerbates biodiversity loss through habitat destruction and other mechanisms. Feedbacks between biodiversity loss and climate change amplify the challenge faced by the ecosystem and the species, making it increasing. What are the possible solutions to the biodiversity loss? We can say addressing biodiversity loss required a multifaceted approach that combines conservation, sustainable development, and global cooperation. So, the first is we have protected areas. The establishing and we can say effectively managing protected areas such as national park, wildlife sanctuary, biosphere reserve, conservation reserves, community reserves, and marine protected areas is essential for conserving biodiversity and safeguarding critical habitats for endangered species. Another is sustainable land use practices. Promoting, we can say, sustainable land use practices such as agroforestry, organic farming, and sustainable forestry can help mitigate habitat destruction, reduce pollution, and maintain ecosystem services while supporting livelihood and economic development. Conservation education, we can say educating the public about the importance of the biodiversity conservation and promoting sustainable lifestyle can foster a culture of the environmental stewardship and empower individuals to take action to protect nature. Strengthening, we can say, legal framework and enforcement. We can say that this strengthening legal framework for biodiversity conservation and enforcing regulation against activities that harm biodiversity such as illegal logging, poaching, and habitat destructions is very crucial for achieving effective conservation outcomes. International cooperations. So we can't conserve the species without cooperation. So collaboration among governments, organizations, and stakeholders at the global level, at the national level, and at the community level is essential for addressing transboundary threats to biodiversity as well as the local threats such as climate change, habitat destruction, and illegal wildlife trade. So we can say that biodiversity loss poses one of the most significant challenge of the 21st century with far-reaching implications for ecosystems, human societies, and the planet futures. So addressing this crisis requires urgent action to address its root cause, including habitat destruction, overexploitation, pollution, invasive species, and climate change. By implementing conservation measures, promoting sustainable development, and fostering international cooperation, we can work towards a more sustainable future where biodiversity thrives, benefiting both current and the future generation. With this, we end today's lecture, and in the next lecture, we will discuss some new topics. Thank you.